and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 2 of Watch the Throne, the show where I pick a wrestling topic of my choice and elaborate on it to my pleasing. Of course, folks, I am your host, King Rickie Rose of the Kings of the Rings podcast, and I am here today to talk about the state of WWE in the month of October. So, October, usually and historically, and especially the entire season of fall, leading into Survivor Series and also leading into the Rumble going into winter, is usually a very down period ratings wise. And monetary wise for WWE, usually, especially around October, you think about everything that's going on in the sports world in particular. In October, you have the baseball playoffs. In October, you have the beginning of hockey. You have the beginning of the basketball season, and football is in full swing. College football is also in full swing as well. It is very, very difficult to be a sports related program and try to compete with pretty much all the four major sports in America going on at the exact same time. And WWE has usually just acquiesced to those four main sports, especially football with Monday Night Football, usually killing them in the ratings, specifically for Monday Night Raw. So what did WWE do this time around, this 2018 October? They decided to jack up the entire fall season to the point where there's about, in the since SummerSlam and going into Survivor Series, there's going to be about 4 or 5 major pay-per-view or WrestleMania size and WrestleMania like pay-per-views going on around the world in wrestling. We already had Hell in a Cell. This Saturday morning, which I will probably be awake for and live tweeting on KOTR_podcast on Twitter, we have the Super Showdown in Melbourne, Australia, the largest pay-per-view and WrestleMania like show outside of the US that we're probably going to see for a while. And then at the end of the month, you have the first ever all women's pay per view, which has been really, really under advertised and underutilized, and just not doing a bunch of anything with it. You have Evolution coming up, which the Kings of the Rings podcast, along with Ram with Ed and everybody else, will be a part of. We'll talk about that more later. After that, 5 days later, we're going into Saudi Arabia for their second big show called Crown Jewel, where Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, and Braun Strowman will be fighting for an irrelevant world championship yet again. After that, in LA, a couple of weeks later, 3 or so weeks later, after after whatever the fuck it is in Saudi Arabia, Crown Jewel, sorry. After Crown Jewel, you have Survivor Series weekend, including Survivor Series, and of course, probably more importantly, War Games, aka NXT Takeover, for Survivor Series weekend. And within all of that, there has been one event, one event that WWE has not advertised pretty much at all. I mean, they haven't really advertised Evolution. They've advertised the crap out of Super Showdown with this last time ever between Taker and Triple H. They've advertised Crown Jewel, like like unbelievably. They've even advertised Evolution more than this show, and I'm talking about the 1000th episode of SmackDown. We have just finished episode number 998. Their next week is going to be 999, and then the week after that is going to be episode 1000. SmackDown, the second longest episodic television show in history, is celebrating its 1000th episode, and you're not even hearing about it. That's a travesty. Remember when Raw 1000 came out? Raw 1000 was a huge thing. Months leading into Raw 1000, you had Heath Slater. Where is Heath Slater? You have Heath Slater wrestling legends from Raw. Legends came back for these one-off segments. Rikishi, Vader, the APA, Lita, Doink the Clown, Psycho Sid. You had all these legends come back for Raw, and it was an iconic moment. It was a huge moment. DX opened up Raw 1000, and it was built up for months. And now you go to the Blue brand, you know, the youngest of the longest episodic running television shows, SmackDown, and you have nothing. Nothing. The only thing we have is that Evolution is going to be reforming on SmackDown 1000. But if you think about it, Evolution wasn't really even a a SmackDown faction. It was more of a Raw faction, and that's a travesty. If you look at the history of SmackDown, this should be one of the biggest moments in the history of wrestling. You think of SmackDown was the first time WWE was on network television since like Saturday Night Main Event. This was WWE's return. It was a huge thing. It was supposed to be comparing to Thunder, but it was just better than Thunder. WWE's talent was in talent pool at the time that SmackDown started was so big that they kind of had to expand to a second show to accommodate people and to accommodate the fans and also to accommodate the wrestlers and to show off all their styles and skills and things that they can do. What helped out SmackDown a lot in those early years was the brand extension of finally when it came to be a couple of years later, and that's a huge moment. The brand extension helped make SmackDown and create it and gave it its own personality and a different show, especially with Paul Heyman and the infamous SmackDown Six. If you guys don't know who the SmackDown Six are, you better look them up. It's the six members of the roster when Paul Heyman was running the show as head of creative that he built the show around. Eddie Guerrero, Chavo Guerrero, Edge, Chris Benoit, Rey Mysterio, and I'm forgetting one person in the SmackDown Six. Oh, of course, the Olympic champion, Kurt Angle. And that time, in that period of time in SmackDown, was a great time. And you think about other iconic moments of SmackDown. Take the SmackDown name, for example. SmackDown was a word that was used by The Rock out of nowhere. Okay, SmackDown is the place that birthed C Nation. John Cena made his main roster television debut fighting Kurt Angle on SmackDown. SmackDown is pretty much where Brock Lesnar became the Beast incarnate. The SmackDown Fist, the most iconic set probably in WWE history. And if they don't bring back the Fist, I will be really, really upset. Think about other major moments. One of the first ever televised Iron Man match between Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar, one of the most legendary rivalries of the past 20 years in professional wrestling. Rey Mysterio had his big debut on SmackDown, on into WWE. You have Taz on commentary was a legendary commentator. You have Rhino goring Chris Jericho through the SmackDown set. Trish Stratus, one of the greatest female wrestlers in WWE Hall of Famer, made her debut on SmackDown. I was there. I was at the Nassau Coliseum. Um, just there's so many moments that WWE can be highlighting, and they're not doing it, and that's it's concerning to me. That is very very concerning to me. Even in recent times, Fashion Files became a SmackDown thing. AJ Styles made himself a made person off of SmackDown. You can say currently right now SmackDown has been, since this most recent brand extension, the more creative and more interesting show than Raw, and yet we get nothing about it, and that's a shame. And hopefully within the next 2 weeks we get to hear more about what their plans are for SmackDown 1000. But as of right now, it's I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned, and you should be too. But with that being said, folks, you can hear me rant about that more and other topics this Friday on our next Kings of the Rings podcast episode, where we will be having a female wrestling Twitter guest member as part of our homage to the female wrestling fans for this month of October, leading into Evolution, where myself and the rest of my co-hosts and Rant with Ant will be having an Evolution tailgate outside of a Nassau Coliseum. Everybody is more than welcome to join. We are also, for the month of October, selling T-shirts on Represent.com, Pink Warrior T-shirts, where all proceeds will be going to a breast cancer research foundation of our choice. But with that being said, I gotta get some rest. I gotta start planning SmackDown 1000. But anywho, folks, my name is King Rickie Rose, the third man of the Kings of the Rings podcast. Check me out on KOTR_podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Find me personally on at Ambassador Biggs on all social media platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Watch the Throne, and I will see you next week.